What's up, guys? Mike coming to you from the dungeon down here, and I don't really know how to do this video. I haven't really thought about it. It's a lot of things that are like on my mind or in my head, but I hadn't really thought about how to say it, and but it's all basically around the idea of not being Christian anymore, and the idea of like telling people, or that kind of thing. And I don't know, it's really been on my, just right at the forefront of my brain, I feel like, for the past 2-3 days, and I hadn't really thought about that was it kind of completely unexpected, in a way. But I think, when you are in sort of a system like that, like a group, and then you leave, if all of your friends or family, etc., are part of that group, and you leave the group, then there's a lot of danger in like losing relationships, whatever those relationships, with family or friends or whatever. And for me, like, I don't really have a lot of friends, like I've always had a small group, and I still have a small group. And it's almost like, it's weird because, like, on my side, like, if my friends believe something that I don't believe, I feel like that's on them, you know what I mean? Like, and depending on what it was, like if my friends believed that it was okay to abuse children, like, that wouldn't be okay, right? I couldn't be friends with that. But like, as long as the actions that match their worldview are in alignment with my values, I guess you'd say, then that's okay. Like, I can be around you, I can be your friend. I don't really it doesn't even really matter your politics to me, as long as like our values are similar or aligned, right? But I don't think that the other side is like that, because their values, or just their entire worldview and their sense of the reality, is so bound up in the belief in the Christian God, that if you go away from that, now it's like, I mean, I know people that are probably hardcore enough Christians to be like, if you're not a Christian, I can't be friends with you. You know what I mean? Like, and it's really, I don't know, it's kind of sad. For me, it's, I hear, like, even myself, like, I'll say to myself, like, well, fuck them, right? I mean, if you're not a good enough friend or family or whatever it is to me, for me to be able to change my mind about something, and then you don't want to be my friend anymore, well, then, the part of me is like, well, fuck you. But that's not really, that doesn't really help, and it's also like, there's a little bit more to it than just fuck you, just the thought of being, I guess, demonized or othered or whatever, like, because of something you believe, is kind of like, I don't even really know what to say. For my entire life, I've been a straight white male, and so I could, it almost would seem to me almost like if someone judged you based on like your skin color, right? Like, I don't, I don't have any choice in that, you know. Black people, brown people, people of color, they don't have any choice in that, and it's like, you're gonna, judge me based off of something that I don't really have any control over either. Like like my, what I believe. We don't really have a lot of control over what we believe. For example, like if you believe that there was a God, say, and then through whatever life experience you quit believing in a God. Well, in part, like you may have taken part in letting go of that belief, but ultimately, like the not believing isn't really up to you. You either, it's just not. Like it would be very, very difficult, say for example, for me, to go from believing in God to not believing in a God, then to go back to believing in a God without like God like directly speaking to me, right? Like I would need like direct evidence, right? One-on-one type, this is undoubtedly true evidence for me to ever believe in like the Christian God, for example. So I wouldn't call myself like an atheist. I'm more like, I guess, agnostic atheist or something like that. I don't know. I hate the fucking categories everybody wants to put themselves in, but I definitely don't believe in the Christian God or any other man-made religious type God. I'm open to there being some creator of the universe, but I'm lean more towards probably not, right? And that's not something I really have a choice in. I don't know that I could make myself believe in God. The Christian God, for example. It's almost like, I guess I was trying to think like, how did I get here? The last video I made was about how I got here, and then, but I wanted to like, okay, well, what, let's boil it down to this most basic thing. And I think the most basic thing that was, I've always, well, for a long time, about as long as I can remember, I have been this type of person who wanted to learn more and more and more and more and more. And when I went back to Christianity, in the sense of like through the apologetics and all that, right? I just wanted to learn as much as possible, as much as possible. And the more I learned, the less I believed, right? Like you would expect it to be the other way around. You would expect it to be like, the more I learn, the stronger I grow in my faith. It wasn't like that for me. The more I learned, the less I believed. So the first thing to go was like, maybe not the first thing, but one of the first things to go was the biblical inerrancy, right? And then then we start to kind of domino after that, right? Because if the Bible isn't inerrant, then there are parts of it, along that goes along with that. Parts of it are literal, parts of it are myth, part of it, which is which, right? And then I learned about like when, let's just say, take the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, when was that written? Okay, so probably wasn't written by Moses. Well, so then, this was written, what, thousands of years after Moses, or, okay. So then the majority of this Old Testament Hebrew text, right, then the majority of this is not reliable, okay? That's fine, but it's the Old Testament. Then you start digging into the New Testament and you find, it's kind of the same thing with the New Testament. And then you factor in all of the translation errors or the different, different ways to translate from, from the Greek to English, or from Greek to Latin to English or from Hebrew to Greek to Latin to English, or and it's all, a lot of the stuff that these apologists tell you are not true. They're just not true. And I wouldn't just say, oh, like they're lying to you outright. It's not so much that. It's that they're more like they're regurgitating a false narrative that someone else gave to them, right? So this is the problem, like with modern day universities, and pretty much everybody will tell you that the people go to university and then they learn sort of like an interpretation of a truth, or maybe a better way to put that would be an interpretation of an interpretation of an interpretation of an interpretation of a truth, which is the same thing that the Bible does, right? It's the same thing that the seminary does. And I've seen several videos where people will talk about, going to seminary, or having been in seminary, or know people that went to seminary, and when they came out, they didn't believe anymore. And it's sort of the same thing that happened to me. The more that I gathered, the more information that I learned, the less and less and less I believed. So the more I learned, the more I had to give up, until I eventually gave it all up. Because I was like, damn, it doesn't really seem like there's much at all reliable in this. Okay. And then you start to see, well, what is this? What is it really? Oh, it's an origin story of a people group, right? And then it's kind of switches into a Pauline cult based on the life of a man named Jesus, right? And married in there are these myths and things like the other Mediterranean gods and their mythos sort of intertwined in the entire Christian narrative and the Old Testament narrative and these things, right? As a means to control people, maybe. That's, you can see that. You can definitely see forms of it as a method of control, trying to control people. There's one thing I heard about, like the Levites in the Old Testament, were like the priestly class, and they're the ones that made all the rules, right? And they're also the ones that they didn't have land, but they still got almost like taxes, right? They're like the tax collectors in essence, because they were the ones that did all the sacrifices, and they took a tenth of, is it a tenth? Yeah, tenth of everybody's stuff. It wasn't like you just gave a tenth of your meat or whatever, so you got a freezer or meat and you give them a tenth of it. It wasn't like that. It was like they would give a tenth of like everything, right? So they give a tenth of their olive oil or whatever, a tenth of their flour or meal or whatever, right? And so the priestly class was the ones that got all that, almost sort of like a tax for Yahweh that the priestly class benefited from. And they also happens to be the ones that set up all the rules. So you see this method of control. Christianity isn't exactly like that. Christianity is a little bit different than that, but it still uses method of control, sort of the Jesus ethos. Though nobody, it's like this is what you have to do, but nobody can do it, so it's okay if you can't. Like, and it's very confusing, right? No longer is there 10 commandments. It's like, basically it's be perfect, right? Be perfect like your heavenly Father and perfect. Oh, well, nobody can do that. Oh, it's totally fine. Just bathe in the blood of Jesus. I mean, sorry, I'm not trying not to like be too hard on the Christians. But it is like, once you get out of it, like you see, it's like, man, this is like kind of silly, you know? But then, like, how do you communicate that to like your family, right? I live in the Southeast, okay? In the middle of the I live in Middle Tennessee. You know how many atheists I know personally? I think one, maybe. And I'm not even for sure about that. Like, this isn't something, people don't wear like a badge around here that says I'm atheist. But they got damn stickers on their cars that let you know they're Christian. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't like, this is like foreign territory for an atheistic type person. Not that they're not here. There's plenty of people around here, but you know, a lot of atheist people tend to be leftist, or let me rephrase that. A lot of the leftist people tend to be atheistic or agnostic, and I'm not a leftist, and I'm not going to be a leftist because I don't want this to get too political. But so where do you go? What do you do? How do you fit in? I mean, I run a small business, right? I could probably get more business for my small business if I went to church and I snuggled up to the people at church. I could probably thrive more in my business. If I came out, say on my business site, and I said, hey, I'm an atheist, I would lose business. I would lose business. And then it's like, oh, well, like, how do I juggle that in my future? Or how do I stay true to myself while also being loyal to my family and their future? You know, it's crazy. I really don't know. But it's kind of difficult, you know, and there isn't really a going back for me. I wouldn't see, like I said, Jesus would have to, or God would have to literally come and speak to me, not in a dream. That wouldn't work. Like, it would have to be lucid, like, you know, something like that. Because it's like I went into the temple, and we'll end on this. It's like I snuck into the temple, and I went through the most holy place, and then I got to the Holy of Holies, and I looked behind the veil, and there was nothing there.